Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cities Building tutorial series in Unreal, where today I'm going to be zoning out areas of our city so we can start to do some population growth and control. I'm not going to get to the population growth and control this episode. I am actually just doing what I've shown here, where I can just start zoning different areas, whether that be residential, commercial, industry. I can plump them all down. I can even drag a whole area and have all this implemented. So that's what we'll be doing this episode. I want to apologise a little bit for the delay between this episode and last episode. Stuff started opening up in the UK COVID-wise, so I had a bunch of family that I've not seen in a long time. So I went to go see them, which meant I didn't have much time to do anything else. But I should be able to get back to doing more frequent videos from here on out. So yeah, if you're enjoying the series so far, please leave some feedback. I've been really enjoying reading all the feedback that's been put up in my AdSense, and I'll try and go through the backlog of comments and stuff. And if there's anything you want to see in any future episodes or anything you want me to bump up the priority list, just drop a comment below and let me know, and I will definitely take that on board. Let's get into the video. Okay, so first thing I want to do is, someone mentioned in a comment, and I'm really grateful for it, there actually might be a little bug in what we did in the last video. I don't think I'm actually adding the children produced by the new citizens into the full list of all citizens. So I spawn this actor here, and what I actually need to do is afterwards I need to get the list and I need to add in the new spawned child actor. That was causing a bug, I think, where eventually, like, once your original population had died out, you wouldn't produce any more children because there were no children in the list to go through. So just make sure that you've done that, and that should hopefully be all good. Okay, so as mentioned, this video is going to be about zoning. So to begin with, I'm actually just going to create a few helpful enums so that we can kind of organize our stuff in a good way. So if I go into the game object grid, I've already got the building type enum, which is zoned placed road. I now want another enum. So if you go into blueprints, enumeration, and this is going to be our zone type enum. This is going to hold a list of the different types of zone we can have. So the first one will be residential. The second one will be commercial. And the last one will be industrial. Like that. Save that. And then what I'm going to do as well is open up my grid cell blueprint. It's already got an occupying type, which is an enum. I'm actually going to create a new variable that is going to be our zoning type. And that is going to be of the type we just created, zone type enum. And by default, let's just have that as residential. But we actually want to be able to set this from outside of here, so from the UI. So if I'm just going to move this debug stuff down a little bit, I'm going to create a new custom event. And this is going to be set zone type. And that is going to take a zoning type of enum we just made again. Zone type enum. Default shot can be residential, and then we're just going to do a set. This isn't actually going to come from the UI, sorry. This will come when we run the logic where you actually click in the world to, instead of spawning a building, you'll set a grid type to be this kind of zone. And I actually do want to do some stuff as well that will just be like just a visual representation for now, that shows what this grid actually looks like. So I'm going to just quickly create 3 new materials. If I go into my materials here, I have a base material. Let's just create a new folder, zoning materials. So first I just want to make a base material, and this is just going to be our base zone material. It's just going to have vec4 parameter. This is just going to be the color that we can override. We'll plug that into just be the base color. And then we also actually, if we just click off here, the blend mode, we're going to have this as translucent. And the alpha parameter, we're going to plug into the opacity. Like that. Save that as our base material. And now I can create a material instance. So if we go to here, this will be our residential material. Open this up. Set the parent to be the base zone material. Override the color. So the alpha is going to be 0.5. And we'll say that it's all green for this. Maybe actually up that to 0.8. That'll be okay. Save that. I'm just going to duplicate these actually. And then rename them. So we have our commercial material, and we're going to have our industrial material. Just change these to be different colors. So industrial in City Skylines it's orange, so I'm just going to go for a similar color like that. And then commercial is blue, so just put that to 0 and put that to 1. In fact, make that a bit of more of an aqua blue might be nicer. There we go. So got my materials, go back to the grid cell, and I just want to, I'm going to add a cube here. And I'm going to set the scale of the X and Y to be 5. This is just going to be our visual representation for now. It's going to be the base zone material, so it's completely transparent at the moment. I'm going to turn off any physics. So no collision, doesn't generate overlap events, it basically does nothing. And then in this event graph, when we set the zone type, or if we set this to be occupied, I'm going to create just a little function. I'm going to call this update zoning representation. And this is just going to be a switch basically. But first, actually, I'm just going to do a check to say, is this occupying type zoned? Do a branch on that. Plug that in. If this is false, so if this is not true, then I'm going to set the cube material to just be our default alpha'd one, so that it stays invisible. But if this is true, then on the zoning type, do that, and I'm going to get a switch statement. True. And it's just going to be the same thing, so I could just copy and paste the cube set material. Just need 3 of these. Set material. Set material, plug the cube in. And then, so for residential, it's going to switch to our residential material. Commercial will be commercial. Industrial will be industrial. Just make sure you plug all these in. And then I want to do this anytime that either our zone type is updated. So if our thing is already zoned, but we want to change the zone representation, then we should update that material. And we also want to do it anytime the thing is set to occupied as well. So I'll do this, I'll move the debug stuff further back. Put this here. And plug that there. I think that's all I will need to do for that one. Cool. Compile, save that. Go back to the main game. So if I hit play, So it's invisible, which is good. For the next step, I need to add onto our UI. So when I actually click on the zoning material, I need 3 more buttons to appear. One for each kind of zone that I can make. So let's delve into the UI. So open up this, open up our main HUD widget. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add a new canvas panel, and I'm going to make that a child of the zoning button. And this is going to store our 3 buttons for our options for zoning. So just add 3 buttons into this canvas panel. Like that. Give them names that make sense. So a residential button, commercial button, industrial button. I'm actually just gonna move the canvas panel up higher. So if you just go to the render transform and change the Y so it goes up a little bit like that. I'm going to set all the buttons to be the same size as these buttons. So these buttons are 96 by 96. So let's make all of these the same. 96 by 96. Just quickly run through this. And then I want the anchor to be in the middle, really. For all of them as well. Make everything centered. And then I'm going to go through all the buttons, and I'm just going to make sure that all their offsets are the same of -50. And then -50 there as well. And then that means they're pretty much spot on. Actually, we know that 96... like 96 is the unit of big, so 96 half is 48, so we actually want to make that -48, just so we get a nice centered object for all of those. So just highlight all 3 of them and do that, so it applies them to each button. I'll save that. And then actually I want to offset the residential button by about 100, so I'm just going to put 1 in there. And then the industrial button, I'm just going to add 100 to this, so that makes that 52. And then we have our 3 buttons that will appear. I'm just going to quickly offline make some images for this and add them in the same way that I did this. So I will fast cut, be back in a second. Okay, I'm back. I've actually created these images, so I just need to change that to be our residential button texture. So if you can't remember how to do this, if you click on the button, go to appearance, the style, you can change an image for a button. So that's just what I'm doing here. So the middle one will be our commercial one, and then our industrial one. It just makes everything look a bit nicer. Obviously, I think I've said it many times before, I am not an artist. So all the placeholder stuff is going to look pretty bad, but I'm fine with that, to be honest. So with the canvas panel, I'm just going to add a new image. Drag that on. Let all the same variables as before, so 96 by 96. The anchor should be in the center. The position, let's set to -48, and then the same for the Y. And then the image is going to be the highlight texture that I've made before. So that one. And you can see it sits over the button quite nicely. I'm just going to be running very similar logic to when I do it based on these, where I will set the position of this highlight slot based on the different, or on the currently selected button. So to do that, oh actually let me just give this a nicer name. So we'll give this the zoning highlight image as the name, so we know what we're referencing. And we've already got it marked as a variable. So by default, I actually want this, kind of want this to be defaulted to residential, but I'll do that in here in some logic rather than doing it outside of that. So what did we make last time? We made some functions. So we have an on category button clicked. I'm going to make a very, very similar function to this, and this can be called on zoning button clicked. Just reorder that actually. So if I open up this one, what do I do with this one? So on a button clicked, I passed in a button, got the positions out, and set up all our stuff. So I'm going to do a very similar thing. So on a zoning button click, if I just open this up, the input is going to be a button. Object reference there. And it's going to be our button that's clicked. Like that. I'll save that. On the button clicked, we are going to grab our zoning highlight image. We're going to get this as a canvas slot like that. And then from this, we can get the position. We will want to, and then I think all we need to do for this is actually, we just need to get the canvas slot, and we just want to set the position to be equal to the button that came in. We actually always want to do this. This isn't going to be an on-off scenario because you always want to have one of them set. So that's good like that. And then I might do the enum logic here. So I'm going to add another input that is going to be our zoning enum. Zone type enum, and that will be our zone type. And this is where we'll set up when we message our player controller, we'll tell them that if we're going to be putting a zoning type on, we want to use this zoning type. So if you remember, in here we have the on placement info updated in the player controller. We're going to add another function to that that's going to be on the zone update. We can actually now, because we're implementing this logic, we want to set this enum to zoned when we click on the zoning button. That's an important thing to do. And we also want to just add in some on-clicked events to all our new buttons. So we've got the industrial one, we've got the residential one, and the commercial ones up there. Let's kind of group these together a little bit more. And let's actually group all of this, put a comment around it and say this is our category buttons. Move that up. So we're keeping everything a bit neater, and then this is our zoning buttons. Bring that out. Probably make it a bit bigger. Pull those down. Okay, and then we just need to call our on zoning button clicked. 3 of those. So this one on our industrial button being clicked, grab our industrial button, and the zone type will be industrial. Easy enough. And then basically just identical for the other two. Just make sure you get everything set up correctly. Try and make it stay neat if you can. So commercial will be commercial, residential will be residential. Just grab the buttons. Put those in. Compile and save that. So that should update, and then so that should update all those, and then so I can probably just do a quick test to see if this actually works. So yeah, when we spawn, you can see we've already got all these buttons available. Click on that one, that becomes active, that becomes active, that becomes active. That's all good. You can see actually when I hover over it, this turns grey, and that's because the canvas slot is actually part of this button. So you might want to detach that from the parent actually. Let's just quickly do that. Go back to the designer. and just pull this out. This will now be named our zoning button canvas. And we want to set that to be the same location as the zoning button. And so that is 400 and 950. 400, 950. Actually, could get that a bit closer, so let's set that to 1,000. Save that. See if that fixes that issue. Yep, you can see now it doesn't turn grey when I hover over these. That's kind of good. Want to actually bump it up just a little bit further, maybe 975. Just so there's a little bit of a gap between them. You may find when you run that test, you get a bunch of errors. I'll just show you my message log. I've got all these, which are a huge amount of errors here, and that is because we've set this to be the zoning placeable mode. So don't worry too much about that. We're about to fix that up. But one last thing I want to do with the UI, I want to make sure that our buttons are set to show or not depending on whether the zoning button is currently active or highlighted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the designer, get the zoning button canvas. I'm going to set that to be a variable so we can actually see it. Drag that in here and then set visibility. We just need 2 of these. So if the highlight is showing on the zoning, this is true, drag that in, and then we want that to become visible. But if this comes through as false, then we want to set the visibility to be invisible. Hidden. Let's put that there for now. And then, so that false needs to come down to here, and then it needs to go up to the on placement mode. Not the nicest looking flow, I guess, but I'm planning on redoing this a little bit in the future when we start adding in other buttons and we need to replicate this more and more. But right now the focus is actually just getting the zoning in, not the UI, so I just want to make sure I'm doing that. So now you can see when I click on this, everything is visible. When I click off it, it's now invisible. One thing I actually want to test is, so this is the location where this is. If I click this off and then I click here, then I turn this back on. Okay, the button hasn't been interacted with. That's good. I was just making sure of that. I don't want to be able to interact with these buttons while they're invisible. I think Unreal actually does it based on a line trace, which is super useful. But let's just toggle a breakpoint just to triple check that that's actually what's happening. So I've clicked, that's on the industrial button. So let's run again. So if I click there, the breakpoint hits. Let's click off it. Let's make sure zoning is not there, and then click in the residential area. Nothing happens. That's good. And one last thing, bit of polish. Designer. Go to the zoning button canvas. By default, let's have this invisible. So go to the visibility and click hidden. Compile and save that. So now when we start up, we don't actually have it there. If I click on it, now it comes up and I can change. So I've got the breakpoint on. Resume that. Turn it off. It's no longer there. All good. Oh, bit of a bug there. So I had that open, and then when I clicked here, I know what the issue is. It's because I've only run this logic when the zoning button has been clicked. I actually need to know if anything is clicked, whether the zoning button is the one that's highlighted. Okay, so this is what I was talking about with this getting messy quickly. I don't know how to do this for every single category that I click, but yeah, I'll refactor in another episode where we can just focus on UI. But right now, I need to set this invisibility to hidden. So when these come through as being clicked as true now, as well. So if I pull that out there, and then I'm just going to have a second set visibility to hidden for the zoning canvas anytime these two come through as true. So the true flow will always hit there. Compile, save that, as well as our false still setting it to invisible. Now if I go back, bring that up, now if I click another one, it disappears as well, whereas before it didn't. So temporary solution there. I will make sure that I fix that in a future episode, because it's getting messy already, as UI tends to. Okay, so now we've done all that, we can actually move on to our game logic. So let's start by opening up our player controller. So some logic that I need to update in the player controller to get all this working is I need to actually, on the event tick and on this input action mouse left click, I actually need to do a second check to make sure what kind of placeable building type we're in. Because I need to run separate logic if this is equal to the zoned option. So I just need to pull a branch. I'm going to put that in there. I'll just move this along. So plug that into that, and then so if this isn't zoned, then we'll just carry on doing our update placement. But if this is true, we're going to call an update zoning function that I've just made over here. Zoning like that. Like so. And then similarly with the input action left mouse click, I actually need to do a whole bunch of logic here. So let's pull this branch down and do another one of those. So if this branch is false, then we'll just go straight into the spawn building. And I'm actually just going to comment stuff so it gets nicely wrapped up and it's a bit more visible what we're doing. So this will be the input action for left click. And then this will just be the tick, essentially. Tick. Okay, so what I need to happen, because when I'm doing my zoning, I want to be able to, as you can see in editor, when I drag my mouse, I get this square and I kind of highlight everything. I want that functionality in the game. So if I was to click on the zoning and I was to drag a box, all the things in that box would then turn to be the zone that I want, essentially. That's the end goal that I'm aiming for. So there's a couple of things I'm going to do this. I'm first going to add in two variables, and these are going to be vector2. Vector 2D. I actually need one of these, I think. And this is going to be the mouse drag start position. Compile and save that. And so what I want to do with this is in my input mouse left click, when I first press down the mouse button, if I'm in the zoning mode, what I want to do is I want to figure out what my current mouse position is on the screen, and I want to save that position out. It's a very simple call, actually. There's a get mouse position on viewport. You can simply use that, and then I'm just going to set the mouse drag start position like so. Easy enough. But what I actually want to do as well is, so when we're placing down buildings, every time we click, we place down a building, but when we're zoning, I don't want to actually place anything until I've released the mouse left click. So again, our placeable building type is zoned. Let's pull another one of these branches down. Like that. And we're going to plug the released into here. Like that. And then I'm going to create a new function. in here, and this is going to be request mouse rectangle capture, and this will make a little more sense in a little minute. What I want to do in here is there's a really useful function called get actors in selection rectangle. As you can see, it's not coming up, but if I get rid of context sensitive, you'll see that the target of this particular call is a HUD widget, which we made a few episodes ago. And what this function does is you pass in a first point, you pass in a second point, and these are points on your screen. You can give it a class filter, and basically Unreal will search for all the actors of that class in like a screen space rectangle, and it will give you a list of them. Now, you can't really do this from an update or a tick function. You have to do this when the HUD is actually drawing. It has to happen at that specific area. So for that reason, this is why we are requesting a mouse rectangle capture as opposed to doing it ourselves. So we can't run this functionality in here. What you want to do is you want to go to your UI and open up your main HUD. And this will be your main HUD widget that you should have set up in your project settings, or your level settings. And what you want to do is you want to look for the event receive draw HUD, like that. And in here, this is where we can actually call that function, that get actors in selection rectangle, like so. But we don't want to be doing this every frame because that would be expensive. So what I'm going to do is in the variables of our main HUD, I'm going to add a Boolean. And this is going to be selection flag. And by default, it's going to be set to false. I'm actually going to, and basically just get that out and do a branch straight away. So when we're drawing the HUD, if this condition is true, that means we want to run this logic. If it is true, actually, just before we go any further, as soon as this becomes true, set this flag immediately back to false so that we don't repeat later on. And it's probably a good idea to just set another event. So let's do a custom event, and this will be request. What I actually want to do as well is I want to add a couple of helper functions and some more variables. So let's start with the variables. Let's add two. We're going to add two vector 2s. So vector 2D, and this will be our selection start pos. Compile, save that. I'm just going to duplicate that, and that will be our end position, like so. And I'm going to create a couple of functions just to make some things happen quite nicely here. So I'm going to do I'm going to create a new custom event, and this is going to be on selection start. I'm going to call this on mouse selection start, just so it's a bit more specific. That is going to take in a vector 2. Vector 2D. And basically, we're just going to set our start position to be the vector that comes in. Easy enough. Probably shouldn't just call that new param. Let's call that start pos. And then we're going to do a on mouse selection. Then we're going to do another custom event, and this will be on mouse selection end. This again is going to take in vector 2, and this is going to be our end end position. And we're just going to set our end point to be that. And we're also, when this end is called, this is where we set our selection flag to be true. So we're ticking this, we're making this positive, so next time the receive draw event comes through, this condition will succeed, and we will run through any logic we need to do. So let's just compile that. And now for the actual functionality. So what we can now plug into this get actors in selection rectangle, we can put in our start position, and we can also put in our end position, like that. And then there's a couple of other parameters on here. So you'll see this include non-colliding components. If you tick that, basically it doesn't matter whether that component has collision on it or not. It will still evaluate that. And then actor must be fully enclosed. This means, so if I do an example here, if I'm just slightly overlapping, this actor will be selected when that boolean is false. However, if this is ticked, then I would have to be completely covering the actor in my selection box for that to be selected. So that's just a quick brief rundown on that. Okay, so let's go back to our player controller. So this request mouse rectangle capture. Well, first we're gonna actually get our HUD. So let's get the HUD and let's cast it to our type of HUD, which is CB. Let's go on main HUD. I got in, and then as this, we're going to on mouse selection end. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to call that same function to get out the mouse position. So that was get mouse position on viewport. I'll plug that straight in. Let's go back to our event graph. And actually we might not even need to use a boolean for this. We could just pass this value straight into the HUD rather than having it as a variable. So I'm actually just going to delete that. Feel free to keep that in if you would prefer. This is just something that I always do this kind of on the fly, so things tend to go wrong during the making of it. As I'm sure you'll see when you'll start to notice all the cuts that I make while I'm creating stuff now, because I do make a lot of mistakes. I just undo and redo them. Right, and then so let's just call on mouse selection started on this main HUD and plug that in. Compile and save that. So now we should have when this starts, we will set the mouse position when this ends. I just actually want to make sure, so if this comes through true, then we want to call the request mouse rectangle capture. Little function we made in there. Okay, and now we want to make a function in our player controller that the HUD, once it gets this bunch of actors, can then pass back to us once it's done, because this isn't happening in sequence. Because we're sending up a request and then we're continuing to update. When the HUD has drawn the rectangle and has sent the information and has collected that information, that's happening separately, so we need to wait for that to come back to us. So if we create another function in our player controller, and we'll call this selection rectangle callback. Input, we're going to have an array of actors, and this is going to be our selected grid cells. And then what we want to do here, it's going to be similar to our our spawn building logic, specifically just the setting occupied part. So what we want to do is let's do a for each loop on the returned array. We want to just make sure we cast this actor to a grid cell so that we know we're definitely dealing with grid cells here. We can now set this as occupied. Again, this is all functions that I've done previously. Set the building type to zoned, and there isn't an occupying actor reference. Save that. And then we also want to set the zone type, and we want to set the zone type to our variable that we made. Plug into that. Hello, this is me from the future. I kind of realized that I made this variable off screen, so I just need to quickly tell you what I did with it. Basically, I just created a zone type enum public variable, so just make it public by opening up the eye icon, and then I went into the main HUD widget, and if you go to the on zoning button clicked function that we made, all you need to do in here is you need to grab your player controller ref, and you need to set the zoning type to the type that is actually passed in on the zoning button click. That's all you need to do with this variable. I just realized while I'm editing the video, you can see I've got Premiere Pro open and I'm halfway through editing. So yeah, thought I'd quickly mention that. Back to the video. I think that might be all the logic we need in here. So let's go back to our main HUD. Let's actually figure out the logic we need to do. So class filter, let's make sure we're only doing this on grid cells, just for a bit of optimization and stuff. We need to get our player controller. Index 0 is fine. Let's cast that to our actual CB player controller. Plug that in. And then as the player controller, let's call the function that we just made, which was the callback, the selection rectangle callback. The out actors just plugs into there. Just neaten this up a little bit, compile and save that. And actually, one thing I have just thought, I think this is the wrong function call, this get mouse position on viewport. I think what I actually want is to just call get mouse position. And then based off these locations, I think I just want to make a vector 2 based on those. Make a vector 2D and plug that in and plug that in as a start position. Like that. Just trying to neaten that up again. In fact, yes, let's collapse this all into a function just to keep it a bit neater. Collapse to function, and we'll call this new function can be called, and the new function could just be called start mouse placement. Like so. And then let's make sure we do the same when we finish. So that's in the request mouse rectangle cam. Yep, that's in there. Paste that in instead, put that in. And now hopefully when I run, a moment of truth, let's select the residential one. I've just clicked down, I'm dragging, it's invisible. But when I let go, we have actually zoned something. Oh, must be a bug somewhere because we've zoned a lot more than anticipated. Let's just try that. But yeah, that works. I can click on individual ones and they zone. What about if I change to the industry one? I am now zoning industry. Commercial, I'm zone commercial. Let's do a big drag. Look at that. That's working really nicely. There's something going on seemingly underneath the camera, maybe. Not sure what that's about. So that's a bug I'll need to look into. I'll do that off camera. But yeah, this is great. So base, this is really good stuff. Look at all the stuff working. That's that went a lot better than expected, to be honest. I'll debug into this bug just briefly off camera, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so after a lot of debugging, I can't quite tell what's happening. There's something going wrong with the get actors in selection rectangle call specifically. It's returning more grid cells than it should be. So I've just added a few. I've gone into the player controller into the rectangle callback, and I've just added a bunch of checks in here. So let me just clean this up and talk you through them. I'm just going to drag that out there. So what I'm actually doing is, once I cast to the grid cell, I'm getting out the actor location of that grid cell. And then I'm converting that world location into the screen location. This is basically me attempting to say, is this actor's location currently on screen? So if I'm to hit play, so this actor isn't on screen because it's off to the left, this actor is off to the right, so they're not on screen, so I wouldn't want to run this logic on them. I'll just change that back to lit mode. But what I found then was, so what you can do with that is it has a return value that is a Boolean, and this will be true or false. So you can put that in and use that to figure out what's going on. But this return value will return true if the actor is off down here to the right. So if the actor is in, if you project it onto the screen space and the actor is at position like 4,000 to the right and 3,000 down, or it's within like 4K bounds, this will actually return true. So as another little step onto that, I know from my main HUD widget that my screen space is 1080 essentially. If you look at the canvas panel, you can see up here is the size. So if I put my cursor in the bottom left, you see that it's 1920 by 1080. So I've also done another check based on the screen location that comes back. I've just converted this into a 3D vector, and there's a function you can make use of called isPointInBox. So I've used the screen location, put that into the point, the box origin 000, so the top left of our screen, and the box extent 1920 by 1080. Return that value, and both of these conditions have to be true, and if they are, then the zone type will be positive. I'm actually just going to comment this out and say bug fix for broken rectangle select. Because there's something else going on here and I haven't quite figured that out, but I don't want to stop this video because of it. And I don't want to leave you with a slightly broken program. But having said that, I think that is the final step. Oh, I did have one last bug to fix. Actually, if I hit play right now, the highlight is defaulted to the middle. But if I was to drag and drop, you would see they're all green. So if we just go back to our main HUD widget, just click on the highlight, and then I'm actually just going to set that as a starting position to -148 so that it defaults onto the residential one. So if I go back now, bring this up, drag and drop, there we go. Got some green, and then I can click on the others. And there we go. Cool. So I've got some kind of zoning, which is really cool. I think I'm going to stop the video there. Next episode, I'm hoping to maybe start on some of the UI cleanup. If that's something that you're interested in, or if you would prefer me to go over something else, then that is also okay. Please just drop a comment below and let me know. I know I haven't done much zoning actual functionality yet. That is a future episode to have that's going to tie in with the population manager we built, so that, you know, when we actually zone down some house zones there, the population manager will say, are there any people seeking houses? And if they are, some houses will start popping up. That's all logic to be done in the future. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please leave feedback below. It's been so helpful to see everyone talking about how they've liked the videos and all the criticisms of it as well. Please just keep them coming. It's really appreciated. If you're enjoying the series, give it a thumbs up, give it a subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye for now.